In order to add some extra space to my data center, I'm going to add an external hard drive to the system. Now, you can just plug in your external hard drive and mount it to the system, and that will give you a lot of just bulk storage, but I want it to be a little more organized than that, and I want to take different parts of that hard drive and put them in different places on the system. And in order to do this, I will need to partition that external hard drive. Now, to think about this as a metaphor, you could think about partitioning a hard drive as creating smaller virtual hard drives out of the one big hard drive, and this will allow you to mount each part of it into a different place. So if I look at my top level folders, I have this data folder, I have documents, and I have repositories, and I want each of those to have some extra storage. Currently, they are all sharing an arbitrary amount of storage on the internal hard drive. And what will happen is as I add things to these, the size of the folder will scale to the size of the contents of the folder. So however much stuff I put in them is how big the folder will be. But what I really want is to take my external hard drive and give them all a dedicated amount. So I can give 500 gigabytes to this one, I can give 500 gigabytes to this one, and I can give 500 gigabytes to this one, and they will always have exactly that amount of space available to them. Additionally, doing this on an external hard drive makes it so that when I save a file to one of these folders, it actually exists on the external hard drive. So if I change my hardware or move to a different system, I can simply plug in this new hard drive and mount the partitions onto a folder on the new system, and all of my files will be as they were, and they will be easy to transport to a new system. Now, the first thing we need to do is to see, once I've plugged in this hard drive, where is it located on the machine? And what I'm going to do is start with the hard drive unplugged, and I'm going to do lsblk, list bulk. And this is going to list all of the different partitions that are mounted on the machine, or not necessarily mounted as a folder. So like we can see here that this hard drive, SDA1, is mounted in the folder boot EFI, and SDA2 is mounted on boot. And we can see here that SR0 is not mounted anywhere. So it exists on the machine, it's plugged into the machine, but it is not mounted on a folder. Now, since I started with the hard drive unplugged, it's not listed here. So I will now plug in the hard drive and run the same command, and I will see something new added to this list, and that will tell me what the name of this hard drive is. So once again, I will run lsblk, and now I can see SDB has been added to the list. So my hard drive is SDB, and specifically it's going to be /dev/SDB. And what I can see here also is that I already have some partitions on this hard drive. I have 4 partitions, 150, 150, 150, and 481 gigabytes on each. And what I want to do is clear all of these out and start over and write some new partitions to the drive. This is going to wipe all of the memory from the drive, and I will be left with a blank drive with the partitions that I designed now. Now I'll need to do this as the super user, so I will use sudo, and I'm going to run fdisk on /dev/SDB. And it wants my password. Now we can type P to get a list of all of the current partitions on this drive. Before we can create any new partitions, we have to tell it to create a new partition table. And we can choose either the MBR or GPT format. Now there are some nuances between the differences there, but really GPT is the newer standard that's kind of replacing MBR. So I'm going to use GPT. And in order to do this, we just type G. And notice that it is going to remove everything. So anything that you currently have on this hard drive will be erased with no way of recovering it. So make sure that you have selected the correct device that we are doing this to, and make sure that you don't have anything important on there that you needed to back up. Now with that said, we can now type N, and we're going to create the first partition. And we're going to default to the first sector, and notice that it is starting at 2048. And this is because in the first few spaces of memory, the first sector, I suppose you would say, is the actual partition table. So we can't start right at 0. And I'm okay with starting there. And now we set the last sector. So basically you're going to say the size of this first partition. And I'm going to give it 200 gigabytes. You can also say kilobytes, megabytes, terabytes, petabytes, whatever you want. And just make sure you have the plus sign, the number that you want, and the unit. And it says that there is already a file system there, and I want to erase that, so yes. And notice that it says saying that it will be removed once I execute a write command. So in fact, if I have made a mistake, I can quit this without writing and I won't have lost anything on there. But so far, this is what I want. Now I want to create the second partition, and I actually want it to be exactly the same as the first. So the commands will be largely the same. I'll start with n, I'll accept the default of 2, I'll accept the default starting position, and I'm also going to say plus 200 gigabytes. And now I will create my third partition. So I will say n, I will accept the default of 3, I'm going to accept the default first sector, and now I want it to just take up the rest of the disk. So I'm essentially putting roughly 200 in one partition, 200 in another, and 500 in the remaining partition. The remaining partition will have some extra, but that's okay. So now I'm just going to accept the default, which will just take up the rest of the disk. And now I need to issue the write command, and this will make my changes permanent. So I'll hit W, and we've created the new partition map. So now if I type lsblk once again, we can now see the new partition map for my SDB hard drive. So I have 200 gigabytes in one, I have 200 gigabytes in the other, and I have 531.5 gigabytes in the last partition. Now before I can actually use those partitions on my hard drive, I have to format them. And I'm going to do that by saying sudo mkfs, so make file system, .ext4, which is the type of file system I want, and then I'll specify it is /dev/sdb and partition1. This command can take some time to run, so just give it a minute to finish. Now I'm going to run the exact same command for partition 2. And finally, we will repeat it for partition 3. Now that that's complete, we can begin mounting these partitions onto our disk space wherever we want. In order to do this, I will use the superuser, and I'm going to mount /dev/sdb1, and I'm going to put that on my repositories folder. And now I can mount SDB2 onto my documents folder. And finally, I'll put SDB3 onto my data folder. Now that I have mounted all of those partitions, my top-level folders of data, documents, and repositories all have a specified size on an external hard drive. So repositories has 200 gigabytes on the external hard drive, documents has 200 gigabytes on the external hard drive, and data has roughly 400 gigabytes on the external hard drive. And if I ever unplug that hard drive and plug it into another system, I can just mount those partitions to a given folder on that system, and all of the files will be there as well. Additionally, nothing I put in these will be taking up any space on the physical hard drive of the system. So my user folder, or all of these folders, can now have more space on the actual internal hard drive. Now we have mounted these manually, and that will work basically until the machine is turned off or restarted. So what we want to do is make it so that as soon as the machine boots up, it will mount all of these partitions into the same place. That way I don't have to run these manual commands again. This is done by editing the Fstab or Fstab file. And so we can do that with sudo nano /etc/fstab. The pattern here is listed on this line here. So we need to specify the file system, where it is going to be mounted, the type of file system it is. We can give it some options, and then these two are different checks that are done upon boot. And for our purposes, we either want it to do those last, or we want it to not do them at all. And so what we are going to do is, let's give another space here for mine. And what I'm going to want to do is mount /dev/sdb1 to, we'll give it a tab, and we're going to put that in repositories, give that a tab, and it is ext4 for the type. And then any of the options, we'll just say the default options, and then I'll say 0, 0 for the end. And what this is going to say basically is that dev sdb1 goes on repositories. It is of type ext4. We're just going to accept the default options, and we're not going to run the dump or pass check on it. Those are really only important for the root file system. And we can say /dev/sdb2 will go to the documents folder. Also ext4, we're going to accept defaults. And again, we'll accept not running those checks. And then /dev/sdb3 goes to data. It is ext4, defaults, 0, 0. And we can write this out. And now whenever we restart the system, the partitions for that hard drive will be mounted in the correct place. So this should give you a basic idea of what partitioning a hard drive is and how to do it. Now there are many reasons why you would partition a hard drive. Maybe you are installing a new operating system, or maybe you're doing something like me where you want to allocate specific amounts of memory to specific folders. Whatever your reason is, this should be a good overview of how to do it in general. And you can take the principles here and sort of put them in whatever way you want in order to get the system that you want. Alright, so we all know how this part works. If this video is useful to you, please hit the like button. It helps me grow the channel and it'll help other people find the video. Also, this is part of a larger project where I'm trying to build a company starting with just 3 old laptops. So if you're interested in seeing how I do that, you can hit the subscribe button and the notification bell to get notifications when I upload a new video. So thank you for watching.